So the MLB All-Star Game just concluded in what was nothing short of an electric event. It goes 6-6, tied ball game, and for the first time ever, we witnessed a home run derby swing off to dictate who won between the National League and the American League. But a key storyline that followed heading into this All-Star Game, and one that has everything to do with recency bias, had to do with Jacob Misiorowski, the young flamethrowing right-hander, cracking this All-Star team after just a measly 5 starts at the Major League level. We're going to get into not only was that a mistake by Major League Baseball, but how this recency bias continuation is something that we are absolutely going to see here for years going forward, whether fans like it or not, and we'll expand as to why that is. Because let's first get into the obvious here. Who is Jacob Misiorowski? Well, Jacob is just casually one of the most dominant, young, thrilling, exciting right-handers that we see currently out of the National League, specifically for the Milwaukee Brewers. What Misiorowski has done in a very limited sample size has been nothing short of jaw-droppingly good, and just 5 starts in 25.2 innings thus far this season has just under a 11.6 K per 9 to a sub-4 walks per 9, a 2.81 ERA, and a 2.6 expected ERA, telling you that the expected numbers are even better than the baseline ERA, so he is not necessarily having any lady luck on his side. He's just going out of his way to dominate. And when you have that forcing fastball, just disgusting. I mean, when you have any type of heater touching 103 on the gun, you know you got something brilliant. But then you mean to tell me you have the 98-mile-per-hour slider in your back pocket out here, the way that he showcased brilliantly and that scroll setting in this All-Star Game where he allowed just 1 hit, and that was it there for Jacob. And this is not at all a slight on Jacob Misiorowski whatsoever or what he is as a player. Is that 6'7", just under 200 pounds. Was there not to love about the flame-throwing dominant right-hander there for the Milwaukee Brewers? Well, if there's one thing not to love, it's not so much Jacob, but rather the system that put him in place to take part in this All-Star Game. Because for rightful reason, Philly fans, everybody and their mother, has had the pitchforks and torches ready to say, what is going on? How do we not have any of our starters really considered here to the same degree as Jacob when they're probably more worthy to be in that spot? And that's something that every Phillies fan and their mother has every right to obviously go ahead and argue, because when you look at sample size alone, this is where recency bias can become a terrible thing for Major League Baseball. They completely lean in on the notion that, okay, we have a top flame-throwing prospect that we want to put on a pedestal, that we want to get eyes on clearly, so that's why we're going to go out of our way, jump through some hoops, and even though there are so many other more eligible players, rightful eligible veterans in Major League Baseball, more deserving of this All-Star appearance, we're going to go ahead and give it to the kid. Why? Because we're trying to sell him to fans, and that is what this comes down to. And I know that people do not want to hear this, but Major League Baseball is a business, and for one reason or another, they firmly decided that Jacob Misiorowski made more sense for the marketing alone to propel on a pedestal than what the Philadelphia Phillies and their rotation pieces had to offer. And I'm not talking about a Zach Wheeler, I'm not talking about an Aaron Nola, I'm talking about Christopher Sanchez. Let's start there. Talking about a southpaw who's had himself nothing short of a jaw-dropping season. Let's take 115 innings pitch of a just under 10 K per 9 to 2.5 walks per 9, a 2.5 ERA, a 2.90 expected ERA, a 2.74 FIP, and just unbelievably jaw-droppingly good for pretty much all season long. And he has consistently put up 3 consecutive seasons now of having a tremendous K-to-walk ratio, not walking any guys higher than what he's doing this season, mind you, and sitting right around a 3.3 to 3.4 ERA each of the past 3 seasons. He's having the best statistical year of his career at this point. Yeah, you mean to tell me that because of the fact that you have a 6'7" flame-throwing right-hander breaking out for the Brewers, that he is more deserving of Christopher Sanchez? I don't think it takes a rocket scientist of a baseball fan to figure out that that's simply wrong, and that is clearly showing you the recency bias and emphasis on the bias that Major League Baseball has with their player selection. And I say this as a Mets fan who's still scratching his head as to how Juan Soto, who put up the best offensive numbers to that point in his season of any eligible batter ever to not make the All-Star Game, is saying this. And when I mentioned my New York Mets especially, you can make the rightful argument just as much as you did for Christopher Sanchez that you can make it to a degree with Kodai Senga, as Senga returned from injury there right before the All-Star break, and Senga up until his injury was absolutely dominant and was in returning. In 77 plus innings this season, at 8.5 K per 9, at just under 4 walks per 9, so the K-to-walk ratio isn't as strong as what we've seen previously for Senga, but a 1.39 ERA and a 3.1 expected ERA, a 3.1 FIP. I'm sorry, like that is as good as you could possibly get from someone in that type of sample size, but no, Kodai did not check check off enough boxes to say, hey, he's deserving to be in this All-Star game and a part of that rotation bullpen, however they were going about their configuration, obviously. And then you add in another Philadelphia Philly, because why not? You know, we talked about one southpaw and Christopher Sanchez. Let's talk about another, and Ranger Suarez. 83 innings, 8.4 K per nine, 2.5 walks per nine, not even, a 2.1 ERA, a 2.79 expected ERA, a sub-3 FIP, and 83 innings and 13 starts. But no, guys, remember, he's not 6'7". He's not young and dominant, even though these guys are dominant. He's not in his early 20s, and he's not a part of a small market club the way that Mizorowski certainly is for the Brewers. So many things went in hand here. You add the big to small market aspect. When you have a small market team like the Brewers, what is the best way to put players on a pedestal for them? It's to have them more in the public eye when going into MLB-related events outside of the games itself. That makes sense as to why they considered him. Why it doesn't make sense and why it's wrong, it's 1000% recency bias. If MLB just took a step back and actually focused on the numbers and the importance of how many pitchers have grinded their tail off to even be considered for the All-Star game, yet were snubbed, not because of anything that they did wrong, but just MLB's preference, is an absolute joke, and is further why so many people take the All-Star game and its roster with a complete grain of salt versus what many fans, including myself, used to love and be passionate about going back previous decades when you actually had the All-Star game configuration of the best players and solely the best players. Between fan voting, obviously not always getting it right when it comes to who should be the All-Star starters, as well as MLB having their hands and touching all this going on right now in the All-Star game configuration to get to the point of giving a young right-hander being put on the pedestal the way that he is. It's great for him and his development and his future, and there's nothing wrong with that for him himself. I've got no slight on Mr. Jacob whatsoever, but I do have a major slight and a major gripe here, like many of you with Major League Baseball, for allowing this to happen when there are so many players far more deserving that have worked their tail off that would absolutely die of the thought of being a part of the All-Star game. Let's also not forget that, especially depending on contract status, a lot of these guys are getting bonuses by taking part in the All-Star game. So whether the Brewers were able to give a bonus to Jacob or not, just something to bear in mind when you consider what his career is likely going to be versus other guys that aren't necessarily going to be able to max out on the long-term deals that a guy like Jacob might just be able to do should he continue to develop and dominate the way that many Major League Baseball are expecting to see. But if you guys were for Jacob making this All-Star game, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below as to why that is. And if you were against it, like myself and many more, reiterate, let us know other pitchers just outside the select 3 that I told you. That's just few of what is an abundance of guys that absolutely would have checked off the boxes and then some better than Mr. Mizorowski here to be taking part in this All-Star game. All in all, it's not the end of the world, just something that you have to bear in mind going forward, because if MLB is going to go out of their way to do this, what won't they do for years going forward for top prospects getting the call, maybe hitting 2 home runs in a week span, but there's so much hype that they're like, you know what? We want to maximize the marketability, we want to maximize the dollars, and we want to maximize the eyes over the more deserving players who should have been rightfully in set position. That is what I'll leave you with, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. If you found yourself enjoying this latest WardyMLB breakdown, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on your way out. This is our latest segment presented by our great friends here at Stark Raven Sports. Shout out to my guy Mike on the queue, doing a great job on the editing as always. You guys can check out my continued work on WardyNYM, where I cover the Mets every single day to over 33,000 subscribers. I do weekly work in the Bleacher Report app for MLB-wide topics, including a multi-hour long live show upcoming on the day of the MLB trade deadline that you guys can see me in the app, going over all the latest news, all the latest moves that happen there, and everything in between. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out, folks.